Hey, welcome to the latest edition of my social studies content burst. Today, we're going to talk about gold, Andrew Jackson, and the removal of the Native Americans from lands east of the Mississippi to lands west. All right, welcome to our video on the Indian Removal Act, gold, Andrew Jackson, the removal of Native Americans, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So before we begin, we need to think about and remember, prior to the European discovery of the North American continent in 1492, we had Native American tribes or American Indian tribes living all over the place, right? There were no separate Indian territories, anything like that. But if you notice down in the southeast corner, that orange glob on the map that you have in front of you, and the map you did from the number one assignment this quarter, you see a number of tribes. You see the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Creek, the Seminole. These are 5 tribes that we're going to discuss quite a bit today. They were the 5 civilized tribes. We're going to talk about it. Now, for quite some time, those 5 civilized tribes were allowed to live and live and let live, really, in the southeastern United States until 1830s, we get a little pushback from the state of Georgia, where the state of Georgia, people in Georgia started to look at certain lands where Cherokee tribes were already living and decided that they wanted to reclaim those lands for farming because there was rumors of gold being found underneath that land. So with the urging of Andrew Jackson, Congress passes a law in 1830. It's called the Indian Removal Act. The Indian Removal Act authorized, quote, the removal of Native Americans who live east of the Mississippi River to lands west. Right, so Jackson pushed Congress to pass this law that would remove these 5 tribes to a newly designated area called Indian Territory. Now, Indian Territory was established by Congress. It's modern-day Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma before it existed, and the whole idea was planned to move there. They would move them there to kind of protect them. In one way of saying it, like that was their excuse behind it. A guy like this, John C. Calhoun, who you see in front of you, said, like, basically, this is for your own good. We're giving you your own land that nobody will bother you on, so you don't have to worry about negative interactions with American settlers. Whether you believe that was doing this for altruism, out of the goodness of their own heart, or because they wanted the land, that's up to you to decide. Right? So they set up this thing in 1824 called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but by 1830 now, their primary objective is start to shift and remove the Native Americans, right? Get them in those lands east of the Mississippi River to the Indian Territory in the west. Well, 5 tribes. Talked about this before. We're going to focus on these 5 tribes, probably more than one. But we have these civilized tribes. And we call them the civilized tribes because they start to assimilate or act like American culture. We have the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole. And many of them thought that if we just start to assimilate and become more Americanized, if we set up our own governments like theirs, they'll live and let live. They'll let us be. But it wasn't enough. The first group to be removed was the Choctaw. Right, they were the first group to be moved to Indian Territory. The state of Mississippi, where they were living, abolished the Choctaw government. They forced the Choctaws to sign a treaty called the Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty, where it was signed with Dancing Rabbit Creek. The land that they had previously lived on was given to the state of Mississippi, and they were removed to Indian Territory. On the way to Oklahoma, about 1/4 of the Choctaw tribe died. Right? Well, news spreads and resistance starts. Like, hey, it's not enough. They're going to remove you. So we have resistance starting. You're going to pick up on that a little bit later on. The Creek. In 1836, federal troops capture the Creek. They capture 14,500 Creek Indians. They lead them, many of them, in chains to Indian Territory as well. One Creek woman noted, she says in this quote, it's the awful silence that showed the heartaches and sorrow of being taken from the homes and even separation from loved ones. I mean, think about that. Removed from your homes, in chains, taken away from your loved ones. 14,500 Creek moved from their lands east to the Indian Territory lands west. You're going to see that this Indian Removal Act doesn't stop here. And you're going to see the first group of people to challenge us in court in the next video.